princesses and pirate ships and the 7 dwarfs. Daddy's smart and you're the prettiest lady in the whole wide world. And now I know why all the trees change in the fall. I know you were on my side even when I was wrong, and I love you for giving me your eyes, for staying back and watching me shine. And I didn't know if you knew, so I'm taking this chance to say that I had the best day with you today. Salt air and the rust on your door. I never needed anything more, or whispers of are you sure? Never have I ever before. But I can see us lost in the memory. August slipped away into a moment in time, 'cause it was never mine. And I can see us twisted in bed sheets. August slipped away like a bottle of wine, 'cause you were never mine. You're back beneath the sun, wishing I could write my name on it. Will you call when you're back at school? I remember thinking I had you, but I can see us lost in the memory. August slipped away into a moment in time, 'cause it was never mine. And I can see us twisted in bed sheets. August slipped away like a bottle of wine, 'cause you were never mine. Just in case you call and say meet me behind the mall. So
Okay, hey guys, welcome back. After a long holiday, so finally I see you again. Okay, so before we start, I have a few announcement for you lah. So before that, how is your holiday? Let me know. What do you think? How is your holiday? Okay, I just want to share some of my experience lah. So actually, there are two kinds of students lah. There are first type of student. After a short holiday, they come back. They feel energetic, they are fresh, okay, they want to learn again. And another kind is they are always like, oh, why is the holiday so short? Why every time good time will pass so fast? Things like that. So I hope you are the first kind because as you know, we are already in week 8, if not wrong, week 7, week 8. Okay, I'm quite confused right now. So anyway, you're going to have a lot of tests and assignment coming up all together during this kind of time lah. But the good news is, if you remember for Datacom, actually we don't have any assignment. So by week 12, you'll be finished. I think you might be able to finish all of your coursework by week 12. So you will get your coursework marks before you go into the final very early. So that is at least a good news for you. Okay, because I know you are having like a lot of assignment and tests coming up. And which brings me to the next thing I want to tell you is that, okay, I have already prepared a welcome gift for you. Welcome back to the stream, and it is on Weber. If you check on Weber, you will see your midterm test is scheduled on this weekend. Yeah, I know. So I know how you feel like. It's like, hey, come on, why one test after another test? Okay, but you will thank me later, okay? Because you see, we can always postpone the test. If you think you're too busy or you have too many tests in the same week, no problem. We can always postpone the test, but eventually you still have to finish before week 14. You cannot postpone to week 15 or week 16. Okay, so I think it's better if you finish all the assessment early, so that after week 12 you can be more relaxed lah. So that's why I plan it on this weekend. So for the midterm test, is something similar with your quiz. You have only 20 questions, and it will give you 10 marks out of your total 50 marks for your coursework. And the scope is really small. Okay, it is only on routing. So previously, before you go for your lab test 1, we have learned about static routing, you learned about dynamic routing, you have also learned about default routing. So only your midterm test only cover for that. Okay. Now, if you do not know where to start, you can also go to Weber. I have already prepared the study kit. So there are only a few videos that you have to go through, and also I added a few stories, medium.com stories that I think you should read before you go to the test. Okay. Anyway, the test will be 2 hours long. You can do this anytime over the weekend, but just make sure that you read through the story that I posted on Weber, so that by during the exam you know where to look for the answers. Okay. Now another thing is that, one more thing I want to clear this up is, some of you might be thinking, in Datacom we have been cancelling labs. Okay, I do not know if you have heard something like that, but I just want to make it clear that we have not cancelled any labs so far in Datacom. Okay, so throughout this subject you will have total 7 labs, and followed by 2 lab tests. Okay, that will make up of like 9 lab sessions. So we are based on our schedule, we are be able to finish all your labs before week 14, so that's fine. We are still on track. In fact, we are early. Okay, we are bringing a lot of assessment early. So yeah, we didn't cancel any labs so far. That's because we have enough weeks for us to have labs on the alternate weeks, so we don't have to be having labs every weeks. Okay, so that is something that you should know lah. Okay, now if you're okay with the announcement, then we'll get into the lectures of the day. And in this week, we will be learning about virtual LAN, which is something that added as an extension to the physical LAN that you have been learning throughout this subject since day 1. And yeah, later on we'll see why we want to learn VLAN, and then we'll do this slowly. So what do you need for this stream is, of course, you will need the lecture slides. It is out on Weber. And then for those who think that okay, now of course, because this is a practical subject, you will also have to learn how to configure VLAN. And I have added a cheat sheet like what we have earlier. It is down on the description below. For those who want the cheat sheet, you can always click on the description and get the cheat sheet over there. And you will also find there is another zip file for the packet tracer activity. and this week we will be playing together. We'll be playing a lot on Disneyland. Okay, so for those who are having hangover, like, oh, holiday is so short, don't worry. We are going to extend our holiday between us, and we'll be going to Disneyland together. Okay, so that's what you need to know. And okay, yeah, let's get started. Okay, so now when we talk about computer networks, we can design network in as a real network, and that we call this a local area network. Some people call that the physical network or the real network. Okay, now over here we are going to learn another kind of network which is called a virtual local area network, which is also going to be the same as a real network, except the way we're going to configure this network will be slightly different, and it is also used for different reasons. Okay, now if you go to your slides here, the whole point of why you want to learn VLAN. So VLAN I'm referring to virtual LAN as VLAN from here onwards. And why we want to do so, there are many reasons. And in this particular stream, we are looking at two reasons. So first one is, of course, as you have seen earlier in part of your labs, in some of the exercises, you will get network that are really, really big. And even like at the first sight, if you look at the network, you already feel, I give up. I don't want to do this. Okay, that kind of feeling. So that's because the network design or the network topology might look very complex. And one of the things that I want to show you today is that by using this VLAN, we can somehow make a complex network like this. This is like a network that I got it from a lab manual. Wow, it's really big. So many devices here into something that is way cleaner, but it still works the same. Okay, and to do so, you need to learn how can we configure VLAN on a network switch. So that is one of the things that we want to learn. Now another thing that we'll be learning is on how can we configure trunk, or how do we build a connection where we call a trunk cable, and we'll get into that in details later. So over here, if you look at the slides here, this is you have a very clean network, and this kind of network is called the enterprise network, or you can call this a campus network. So at the first sight, the very first difference that you will notice would be like, this looks way cleaner, right? And then there is certain kind of hierarchy to it. So before that, before we learn about VLAN, we just like add any device. If there's a port for me to add, I'll just add. I don't care how it looks in the end. Okay, just like your hair, it will look like your hair, but the moment you wake up. So over here, it is arranged in hierarchy. So if you look at the network here, you have 3 levels. So you have the access level at the very bottom, you have the distribution in the middle, and then you have the core layer at the very top. Now, why would we do something like this? The first reason would be for performance. If you have a network that you put it in a 3 layer, you actually there are many performance benefits that come with it, and also it is you have better security because you have better isolations, stuff like that. Now, but this 3-layer architecture is not part of the syllabus in this subject. For those who are interested to learn more, there is another subject because server management that you'll be looking into in depth about all these things. So as in the datacom level, you only need to know that you can design network in such a way that it looks way cleaner in a hierarchical order, something like this. Okay, so this is just as an intro to you. But what we really want to focus is about virtual LAN and how we can configure virtual LAN. Now, before I show you about virtual LAN, I want to give you the motivation of why we want to build a virtual network instead of a real network. Now, when we talk about virtual LAN, so it's like you have the LAN here, which is what we have been doing all this time. Now you're adding the V in front, which stands for virtual. And virtual means something that is logical, but it is not real, okay? And I'm sure you have heard of things like virtual reality, right? You know, now if you follow some gamers on Twitch or YouTube, some of the time they are playing PSVR game or like VR games, okay? So they need to put in the big goggles and then they get into another world to play games as they physically get there. So that is, we call that virtual reality. Now, just between us, I think people come up with virtual because in a physical world, in the real world, there are certain problems that we cannot solve. Why we cannot solve? Because like, okay, sometimes it is bound by the law of physics or stuff like that. And if we move this thing, the same thing, into a virtual environment, then we have better chances or we have better control of solving these kind of problems. Now, one example would be right now, okay, I hope I'm not offending anyone, but I say, now go and hug your girlfriend. Okay, pause this stream, go and hug your girlfriend. And suddenly think, hey, 404, I don't have a girlfriend. Because in the real world, you don't have a girlfriend. I'm sorry about that. But you see, if you move the same thing and then you're in a virtual environment, then you can create as many girlfriends as you want and you'll be hugging every different girl, every single day. So this is something that you can add on a virtual environment. And when it comes to computer network, it is the same. When we are building a real network, there are certain limitations that you cannot solve unless you buy more devices or you buy better devices or you have to build a bigger and even more complex network, which is why we have this thing called a virtual LAN, which is going to help us to build a lot of networks. And at the same time, it is cost saving, means that we don't have to spend as much, and it still works almost the same as a real network, okay? So that is what we mean by virtual LAN. Now, the difference between a real LAN and a virtual LAN, there is a slide on that, so we'll talk about that in a short while. But just as a very brief intro, you can think of LAN as something that is real, something that you can really see. Now, for example, if I give you a router, okay, on this router, this is a router, I connected 2 cables. And then if I ask you like, okay, now can you tell me how many networks that I have built with this router? Immediately you can tell me that, okay, there are 2 networks here, because we know that every connections that you make to a router will give you a new network, okay? That is something that you can see. But when we talk about virtual, it is a bit indirect because you cannot see on your raw eye. Now, the next thing you should know is that when you are building a virtual network, we do not do this on a router, but we do this on a switch. So this is something new here, okay? And let's say this is a switch here. Now, before we learn about virtual LAN, if I connect this, something like this, and I ask you, looking at the switch here, can you tell me how many networks do we have? You can tell me immediately there's only 1 network here, okay? But with a virtual network, it is a bit different because now every port on this virtual network can be a network on its own, or it could still be the same 1 network, which means it is getting a little bit more complex. Okay, so now if you look at this problem here, I have a router and says that this router is a 4-port router, meaning that I can connect 4 cables to this router. Okay, now I give you a job. I want you to build 4 networks with this router. Okay, I think it will be quite straightforward for you because you have been following this stream for so long. So to build 4 networks is very easy. I just connect 4 cables and then I can build 4 networks here. Okay, so I'm going to color code this for you. And yeah, this is how you build 4 networks. Now, then the next job, okay, you have done with the first job. The second job is I want you to build another 4 networks using the same router. So naturally what we will do is you are going to go and get the same router, another unit of this router, and then you will build another 4 networks. Okay, something like this. And once you have done so, you're going to have like 8 networks here. Okay, and what you see here is something that only happens in an ideal world. And if you really want to build this network in the real world, it is more complex than that because you have to think about this. If I build this network, now these 4 networks, these 8 networks, they are not connected. Okay, so somehow you have to connect routers and routers together. Now, for example, if I have to connect these 2 routers together so that all of these 8 networks can talk to each other, I have a little bit of problem because I have already maxed out all the port that I can use on this router. So somehow, let's say assuming that we cannot add any new port, we cannot buy any expansion card to be added on the router due to the hardware limitation, then we have to remove like some of the network here just so that we can connect these 2 routers together. And when I do so, 2 of the network here is disconnected, which means that now for me to connect 8 network that we have said earlier, I will have to buy another router, another 4 port routers here, and then I want to add back the network that I deleted earlier. Okay, so now again, if it is confusing, probably I should just label this one for you. So let's label them by number. So now 8, I have all the 8 networks here again, and you see when I add this third router, somehow we know that I have to connect this router, okay, hold on, to these existing 2 routers, right? So I can use any free ports here, and then because you see the existing router is again maxed out, so I have to sacrifice another few networks here just so that I can connect this one here. Do you see something like this? Okay, maybe let's say I don't want to connect like 1 cable to each of the router, so I still have to sacrifice 1 network here, and then I have to add back the network somewhere here. And with that, we have done what we are asked to. We have 8 networks that are all connected. But the problem with this is that if you can see what is going on is every time we are adding more networks, we are actually using some of the ports on the router just to connect routers and routers together. That's one problem. And normally at the rate of network is growing these days, we are adding so many networks every day. You cannot just build networks on routers, like you have to buy too many routers just to build the networks that you need. Okay, now if you have, based on what we learned earlier, we know that routers, they don't come with so many ports and they are slightly more expensive if you compare it to some other networking devices. Okay, so what can we do here? We still need a lot of network. You cannot say that, okay, if building network is so difficult, then I don't want to build network. Okay, I just put all the devices on this world into one single LAN. Then problem solved. I don't even have to learn this subject at all. But that doesn't work. In a short while, you'll see why we cannot just simply add all the devices onto one network. And how do we solve this? Yeah, which brings us to VLAN. So let me ask you a question. What are the other network devices that we have seen so far that has more ports than a router? Or you can say have many ports. It is a network switch, right? So which is why in this lecture, we're going to learn how we can actually build network on a switch instead of a router. So you have to change what we learned a little bit. Okay, what we learned earlier a little bit. So earlier we say that if you want to connect 2 networks, you need a router. Now there is one extra rule here. If you want to connect 2 networks, you can also use a switch. The only difference is the first one, when you are doing it on the router, it is a real physical LAN. If you do it on a switch, it is called a virtual LAN. Okay? So what is virtual LAN exactly? Now let's get back to your slides here. And okay, we're going to take a few minutes to go through what is VLAN in a nutshell and why we want to do VLAN. Okay? So over here, I will skip all the wordings because you can always come back to the wordings whenever you think you are free. So I just want to focus on the diagram here. Now looking at the first network here, you have 2 networks. I want you to look at the network on your left. So over here you see you have a big network, which is like all the devices connected to one switch. Now when you do so, this is considered as one big network. Okay? The only device that we have learned so far that can give you more than one network is a router. Okay, so if I connect everything to this switch here, all these devices belongs to one big network, which is correct. This is what we have been learning. Now, if you look at the right okay, the network on the right, we are still connecting exactly the same devices, the end devices. So don't look at the router. The router is missing here, but the same end devices on the same switch, but this time instead of having only one network, we have two networks. So over here, you actually have two network, which is what we call, first one is a LAN 3, but this is a virtual LAN, so it's a VLAN 3, and then you have VLAN 2. So what you really need to know is that before this, when I see a switch, it is just one network. I don't care how many devices you connect to that switch. Now, it is different. If I ask you the same question, how many network do you think it is on this switch 0? You cannot answer directly. You have to get into the switch. You have to type some command to find out how many VLAN has been created on this switch. Then only you can tell how many network is here. Okay, so what it means here is that this switch is actually the switch, and it has 5 ports. Let's say it has 5 ports. Actually, it has more. Only 5 ports are used. So what we are doing is I go to each of the port on the switch. So let's say I have a something like this. This is a switch, and yeah, I forget to mention that when you are doing VLAN, you can only do this on the managed switch. So there are many different kinds of switches that you can buy, but if you want to configure VLAN, it has to be a managed switch, meaning that you can get inside and configure this switch just as if you would configure a router. Okay, now the next thing is all these ports here. What we are doing is we want to assign them to different network, okay, different VLAN, and then after that, when we connect the device to all these different ports, those devices will automatically join the network or the VLAN that we have configured on this switch. So what we are doing here is that on this port here, I set it to VLAN 3. On this port here, I set it to VLAN 3. Here I set to VLAN 2, set to VLAN 2, here I set to VLAN 2. Do you see that? So that means now, every port on the switch here belongs to a different network or the same network, depending on how you are going to configure them. Alright, and in the short while, you'll see how we can actually do so. Now, so what you want to take away from this diagram is that if a port, you set it to V3, then you connect a PC to that port. That PC will now belong to VLAN 3. Okay, do you get what we are trying to show here? So, if you're okay, let's go to the next one. Now, on the next slide, again, you have two networks. Okay, looking at the network on the left, you have, this is exactly the same diagram that you have from the previous slide. Now, you have two VLAN, VLAN 2 and VLAN 3, and all 5 devices here. So you see, with one switch, if I ask you how many physical switch do you have here, I only have one switch here, but I have 2 different networks. Now, if you look at the diagram on the right, you also have 2 networks. Okay, you see, remember what we said earlier. Every time you have a switch, you connect, doesn't matter how many devices to that switch, they all belongs to one network. So over here, what is going on is that I take one physical switch, and then I connect these 2 devices, server and the PC, to one switch. They belong to one LAN. And then I take these 3 devices here, I connect it to another switch. They belong to another network. This is correct. This is what we have learned. It is still following the logic that we have learned earlier. Okay, you see over here it is 2 networks, which is because these 2 switches are not connected together. If I take a cable and I connect these 2 switches together, then all these things here will become one physical network. Okay, but because I didn't connect them, so actually you have 2 networks here because you have 2 switches. Do you get it? Now, in fact, there is something that you should fix here. This one is supposed to be LAN. It is not VLAN because VLAN is logical. When you are doing this thing, it is a real network. It's a physical LAN. Okay? So what we are trying to show you here is that you can do the same thing. I want to create 2 networks. Before you learn VLAN, you have to buy 2 switches. That's the minimum. Okay? But after you learn VLAN, you know that I can do 2 networks using 1 switch. So over here, instead of using 2, you are actually combining 2 switches into 1. And then how do you separate them into different network? It will be logical based on how you configure VLAN on that one switch. Okay. Now, next slide here shows you how is LAN actually different from a VLAN. Now, yeah, I looking from the chat, you guys are right. Things are getting difficult, and that's how life works. Okay, like if when you are learning about just LAN, it's like okay, apple is just a fruit. Okay, life is simple. And then when you learn about VLAN, somehow Apple become a phone company, and life become a lot more complex, right? Now, but you still have to learn VLAN. I tell you why after you finish VLAN. In fact, just a little bit of sneak peek for you. The network that we are running today, the network that you are from, the unified network, is actually running on VLAN. It is not LAN, okay? So, you see, in Malaysia, how many subscribers do you think Unify have? We have so many subscribers, and all of this network, or unified network, is actually running on VLAN. So, you can imagine how important is VLAN, okay? And there's another example, like I'm not sure if you have encountered this. So if you are on Unify, when you subscribe to that internet, you get a TV box that comes with the connections that nobody is going to turn on the TV and will just put it somewhere, okay, and then forget about it. So that TV, I think they call it the HIP TV or something. Okay, now sometimes when you go to use Unify, you can go online, but you cannot watch the TV. And in some even weirder case, you can watch the HIP TV, you know, or Hippo TV, I cannot remember, but you cannot go online. Why? That's because the way TM configure this is TM put your unified connections in one VLAN, and they put your HIP TV into another VLAN. So when you subscribe to Unify, you actually have two different VLAN. Okay, so there's something extra that you should know. Now, coming back to the slides here. So how is a LAN really different from a VLAN? Is okay. First thing is, of course, it's obvious one. VLAN, you do it on a switch. A LAN, you do it on a router. Okay. Now the another difference would be if you look at the diagram here on the right. Okay. Now both of this diagram here, you have three networks. Now the example here is showing subnet 1, subnet 2, and subnet 3. Again, I want you to remember that we don't differentiate between subnets, network, and LAN. These words are used interchangeably in this subject. So when we talk about LAN, we also talk about it is also referring to subnet. It is also referring to network. They are all the same. So, but when you go to level 2, it will be different. Okay. Now, anyway, the point here is on the left-hand side, you have three subnet. As what we seen earlier, every time you connect a lot of devices to a switch and then to a port on a router, then you are creating one network. So this, which is why over here we have three networks. Okay, now, okay, I have to refresh this for a while. So if you look at the diagram on the left, you have three subnets, and that's what you know. Okay, now when we talk about VLAN, it is a bit different because we cannot say all the devices that connect to the same physical switch is in the same network. They could be in different network. Okay, now which is what you see here on this switch here. Okay, I have three PC as well, so three PC are connected, but right now they are all three of them are in different network. Okay, so this first PC here is in VLAN 1. This first PC, second one is in VLAN 2, and the third PC is actually in the third VLAN 3. Which means that actually they cannot talk to each other because they are in different network. Do you get what I mean here? So over here, of course, these three guys will be able to talk to each other if you have the correct IP addressing because they are in the same LAN. But on the right hand side, they cannot because they are in different network unless you have a router that connect them together. Okay, so this is what you should see here. So what it means here is like on this switch here, okay, what I want to do is I get into this port here, and then I want to set this to VLAN 1, and then I get to the second port here, then I set this to VLAN 2, and then I get to the third port here, I set it to VLAN 3. And by doing so, when I connect a PC to the first cable, okay, this cable here, then this PC, it become inside VLAN 1. Then I do the same thing, I connect another PC to the second cable here. This PC, it become in VLAN 2. Okay, now of course in a short while you will learn that VLAN 1, you don't have to configure because it is called the default VLAN. So over here in this diagram, the takeaway here is that a switch, it doesn't, we cannot say that if they are connected to the same switch, then they are in the same network. So that's the first takeaway. Now the second thing here is that if you look at the next switch here on the bottom, okay, this switch here, I again have 3 PC, and this PC is now also in VLAN 1, VLAN 2, VLAN 3. So what I have done is actually almost the same thing. I get into this port here, I set to V1, and then I get to the second port here, I put it to VLAN 2, I get to the third port, I put it to VLAN 3. Which is why when I connect this PC, they will join the respective VLAN based on how I configure the switch. So the second takeaway here is that if you look closely, you can actually link all these switches together. So even though 2 devices, they are connected to 2 different switches, but they can belong to the same network. Do you see? So over here, this guy here and this guy here, they actually belong to the same network, VLAN 1. In fact, these 3 guys here belongs to the same network. Okay, and it is the same for the other 3 guys in VLAN 2 and the last 3 guys in VLAN 3. So the takeaway here is that when we do VLAN, you can actually get many switches and then you connect all these switches together. And after you configure VLAN, depending on how you configure, if I connect a few devices to different switches, but if they happen to be inside the same VLAN, they can talk to each other. Okay, and we call this thing as VLAN spanning. Okay, so there's a word for this, it is called VLAN spanning. And this one we're going to learn a little bit more about VLAN spanning in a short while. But I want you to know why is this important. Is because now we are trying to solve a problem where when I want to build networks, I cannot do it on routers because it is kind of expensive and I don't have so many ports on the router, which is why we want to do it on a switch. Now over here you don't see there are too many because this one is a cheaper switch that you can buy, only 8 ports here. Okay, but in fact if you buy a switch there will be more than 8, like 24 ports or even more than that. So logically we will want to create network using a switch because it is more economical and it is also manageable. But even with a switch that is like 24 ports, one day you will still run out of ports, right? Because you are always adding device. So when you have a switch and then you do VLAN here, what if one day I finish using up all the ports? I will need to buy another switch. So with VLAN, later on you will learn how we can do trunking to connect many switches together, and then we'll do this thing called the VLAN spanning, so that even though things are connected to the physical switch, which are different physical switch, they can still talk to each other. Okay. So now let's get to the next slide here. So we only have a few more slides to go. I think the reason I'm going through the slide with you is because it is important for you to get the intuition about VLAN right before you start to configure VLAN. Okay, you don't want to be the guy that, okay, you want me to configure, I can configure, but you do not know why you're doing so. So which is why I want you to go through this. Now, the next slides here talks about when you have VLAN and when you don't have a VLAN. Okay, now looking at the diagram here on the top, you see that I have 3 departments, correct? So I have engineering, I have marketing, and I have sales. And now all these 3 departments are isolated in 3 different networks. So you see, they have their own network address, means they are in different networks. So what is happening here is that if I'm engineer in the engineering department, I belong to different network. So in certain case, this is for security. Okay, sometimes I don't want the engineer to talk to the people in the marketing because they might leak some information that the marketing people shouldn't know. For example, the iPhone 12 that's going to be released soon. I only want the engineer be working on the iPhone to know. I don't want other people to know, which is why we put that in different network. Okay, so over here without VLAN, if you want to create 3 network, you have to buy 3 switch, and then of course you still want to connect them to a router, because if you don't connect them to a router, then they will never ever be able to talk to each other. Okay, but there are still times where you want all these 3 networks to talk to each other, which is why there is a router here. Now to do the same thing here, but if you want to cut costs, remember VLAN. So instead of buying 3 switch, I can just combine them into 1 switch. It's not combined, it's just instead of buying 3, I buy 1. And then how I put them into 3 different networks is by logical separation using VLAN. So you see here, what is going on here is like I go to the switch, and then on this port and this port and this port here, I set this one to engineering department. Okay, the purple color one. Now after this, I get to this port, and this port. I set this to marketing department. Then I get into these 3. Now I get into these 3 ports here. Then I set this to the sales department. And with this, every time I connect my PC to the port that you assign, I will go into my right department. Okay. Now of course you will see that there are 3 connections here. So these 3 connections means that if you want to link 3 VLAN together, you need 1 cable from your switch to the router for each of the VLAN. So why I have 3 cables here is because now I have 3 different VLAN here, and for them to talk to each other, I need to connect them to a router, and that connection means that I need to have 3 cables and 1 each for this VLAN. So this one, maybe this one is for the engineer, okay, and then this one it could be for the marketing, and then this one it could be for the other one, the sales. So you should know 1 cable for 1 VLAN, and that is what going on here. You see, so the takeaway here is that with VLAN you can really save a lot of money because you don't have to buy that much of the device anymore. But it comes with, of course, all magic come with a price, okay. And this one, the problem with VLAN is that it will add a lot of complexity to your network configurations. Now you see, if I'm the lazy kind of person, I will just use, I don't want to use VLAN because I don't have to configure anything on the switch. Think about this. If I want to build 3 network, I buy 3 switch because it is not my money, it is Utah money. Why would I care? I just connect the device to the switch. Without doing anything, they are already connected. Why would I want to trouble myself to buy 1 switch to save money, and then I have to get into the switch and configure that, right? So that is the downside that comes with VLAN. You have added complexity when it comes to configuring your network. So now another example that before I go to the next one, I can give you is, okay, I can think of something like, let's say in Utah, right? Even in Utah, we have like so many departments. You have FICT, you are from FICT, the best department, yeah, you are in the right faculty. And then you have FBF, where you have the most pretty girl will be in FBF. I think you already know that by now. So different department, and even in Utah, we have different network for each of the department. So if you ask me why, the reason is really simple. If we have all the department belonging and join the same network, then we have this privacy concern, and in fact you even have some security issues. So for example, if we break the Utah faculty to different network, and then today I set your midterm test, okay, I put it on my local machine, which is connected to the Utah network, the FICT network. Now if you are a smart person, okay, I hope you know what I mean by smart, and if we are in the same network, you actually, in fact, you can find a way to get into my machines, and you can get my midterm test, and then you put it on eBay or Lazada, and that's how you can make some extra money. Okay, this is just an example, okay, I'm not saying that I'm doing so. So That is why in certain cases we don't want everybody to be in the same network, and because certain attacks that you will see later, if you don't have too many people in the network, to put it simple, you don't have too many network incident or security incident. Okay, so if you're okay with this, I give you a 2-minute break, just 2 minutes to go through what we have talked about, and then we will finish up the first part with the benefit of VLAN. Okay, so the last part over here will be we want to talk about why we want to do VLAN. So once we are finished with the theory, we are going to move on to the playthrough. I know you have been waiting for. That's what you're waiting for lah. You are very excited. I know. So just a little bit more, then we can start to play the game together. Okay, so I'll see you back in 2 minutes. Okay guys, so coming back to the slides here, let's finish up this benefit of VLAN, which is also one of the important thing. I mean, okay, just between us, if you are ever thinking about to become a network engineer once you graduate, or if you are ever thinking about to work in Huawei or network company like Cisco, this is one of the popular questions that you always get. So some people they like to ask you, okay, now you say you know how to build a LAN. Great, everybody know how to build a LAN. So is there any way you can build network, but you can at the same time save a lot of money? And the answer is actually VLAN. So right now we're going to go through 2 benefits of why we do VLAN, the scientific benefit of course, and then before we move on to configuring the network. Okay. So first thing is now when we are doing VLAN, we are really trying to break all this big network into smaller network. So why we want to build network that are like smaller, fragmented, instead of one big network, and then I save so much energy in terms of managing the network. So I want you to look at this example here. So now let's say if I have 5 devices, okay? So I have PC1, PC2, PC3, PC4, and PC5. Now they are all connected to the same switch. And this time we are not doing any VLAN yet, so of course immediately you can tell that all these 5 devices, they are in one physical LAN. Okay, so these are in one network. So the next question, if I ask you, if PC1 right now is asking for an IP address, so we have learned about if you ask for an IP, this will be handled by the DHCP server, right? And then DHCP is actually a broadcast message, meaning that doesn't matter who is asking for an IP, that request will be sent to everyone which is in the same network, the same LAN. So in this case, if PC1 asks for an IP, the request will go to everyone on the network except PC1 itself. So 4 other devices will receive the packet. And then we say that the problem with broadcast is that, let's say if I have many devices in the network, then all the devices will have to receive the packet, even though they are not going to do anything with the packet, because this packet is not meant for them, right? So if you have a very big network, every time you have a broadcast traffic like the DHCP here, which is definitely what you're going to have, because every time you join a network, you will be asking for an IP. This makes the traffic, the unnecessary traffic to be increasing in the network, because all these traffic are just flooding the network, using your network resources and bandwidth, but they didn't serve any real purpose. Do you get what I mean here? So if you build a network that is not that big, meaning that you still have the same number of hosts, say like you have 20 PC, but instead of you put all these 20 PC into one basket, one network, you break them into 3 or 4 different networks, then when somebody do a broadcast, then you don't need all these people to get the packet. Instead, only the people belongs to the same smaller network will get it. Okay, which is why this is part of the reason we want to put devices into different networks instead of just one big network. Okay, if it is not for this reason, then the whole internet can just be one big network, and then we can say bye, that's it. We don't have to learn about computer network anymore. Okay. Now I hope those students who are not really paying attention, when you hear the word bye, is not a trigger word. We are not ending the stream yet. Okay, it's just an example. Now coming back to this example here, that what we have here is a DHCP, which is okay because DHCP is legit. It is not doing something wrong. You have to do it. Okay, but what if one of the PC is actually a bad person? For example, let's say PC5. Okay, now he used to be a good person, and then in a short while, because let's say he's working here and then he said, wow, OTL, online learning, so many assignments, so many tests, it's driving me crazy. And then suddenly he become the bad guy, so he want to bring down the network. So let's say this guy, he become a rogue host. Okay, we call this a rogue host, meaning that he's a bad person. Now he can do this thing we call the broadcast attack. There are many ways you can carry out a broadcast attack, but in general the name is called the broadcast attack because it is going to be keep on sending a lot of packets to everyone on the network non-stop, continuously. Okay, and this process we call this flooding the network. Flood means that like you have the tsunami and then your thing get flooded. So over here we are trying to flood the whole network with packets. There is no meaning one. Okay, it is not there is no useful data inside. We are just sending dummy data. So what can happen is that PC5 can send a lot of packets to the whole network, keep on sending, and in a short while, at the rate of course, PC5 alone is hard to do so. Normally you need a few PC, but if you keep sending packets at a rate that is faster than your network device can process, okay, that means your switch cannot take it or your router cannot take it, then they will crash and if this is crashed, then the whole network will go down. So this is how one of the attack can happen by targeting the network device. You keep sending them data until they cannot tahan already. They throw the table, they give up. Then sometimes we call this like buffer overflow or like queue overflow. So things like that will bring down the whole network. Okay, now this is the broadcast attack. So how can we prevent this broadcast attack from happening? Now, of course, you cannot totally prevent a broadcast attack unless you go to PC5 and then you tell him, hey, don't worry lah, come on, come back to the light side, don't join the dark side. That one is maybe it work lah. But let's say you cannot stop the broadcast attack. What you can do is you can limit the scope of the broadcast attack. So you want to minimize the affected machine. So for example, in this case here, again, PC5 is still the bad guy. But if I configure VLAN, so what do we mean by configure VLAN? Means that I go to the ports here. Okay, I put them into different networks. So for example here, I set this to VLAN 2, VLAN 2. Then this one is VLAN 3. Then this one is VLAN 4. And this one is VLAN 4. Okay, now if I do so, you can see that actually over here I will have 3 different networks, because depending on how you connect how you configure the switch, and then how you connect the device to the switch. Okay, so this one is based on the port one. Okay, I'm going to use blue color. So if I do so, you see PC3 and PC4 will be in one network, PC1 and PC5 will be in another network, and now PC2 will be on its own network, a network itself. Okay, because you see how I put different configuration on this switch. Now in this case, if a broadcast attack happen, this PC5 will be doing the same thing, keep on sending data to flood the network. Okay, but let's say it keeps sending, actually this one here right now, it is only affecting one PC. This one is affected because a broadcast attack, it doesn't go to another network. It is bounded by the boundaries of the LAN. So when I want to spam people, I can only spam people in my own network. So over here, this guy will be affected. Now for example, if we are trying to target the end devices, so in this case, PC1 might go down because he is targeted and then he run out of resources and then he go down. But PC2 is still safe because the attack never go to another network. PC3 and PC4 will still be safe. Do you get what we are doing here? It means that by putting devices into a few smaller networks, instead of putting everyone into one big basket, you are actually limiting the scope of broadcast attack, and then you are reducing the number of devices that might be affected by this kind of attacks. Okay, and that is one of the reasons you want to do VLAN. Okay, now if you're okay, then let's get back to the slides, and then we want to talk about the second benefit here. Now, second thing, if you look at the diagram here, it's pretty straightforward. We want to do VLAN because of one of the features that we want to take advantage of, which is called the VLAN spanning. So if you still remember about VLAN spanning, is like I can have many switches, different switches, and then I configure VLAN on the switch, and then I put these switches on different location. Okay. Now when I connect devices to either of these switches, if they belong to the same VLAN, they can still talk to each other. Meaning that right now, for two devices to talk to each other, they don't really have to be physically connected to one switch anymore. They can be on different switches, and if they are in the same LAN, they can still talk to each other. So of course, I'm saying this like if you don't connect a router. Okay. Now if you connect the router, you can always talk to anyone if you configure that correctly. So what I'm saying here is that I want to ping a host which is in the same LAN, but because of VLAN, one LAN 2 can also exist on another switch LAN 2, and these two LAN is the same LAN. Okay. Now, why would we do so? If you look at the diagram here, you see there is this thing we call the human layer, means people like us lah. Now, let me give you an example. If today I am working in FICT, right? So in FICT, we have one switch here. And then in FBF building in block H, there is another switch. So different block in our campus, we have different switches. And in all these switches, it is configured with VLAN. Now, meaning that, let me take this as an example so that it is clear. If this switch is an 8-port switch, so it's not that many, but let's say if I want to set the two port for each faculty, so FICT get port number 1 and port number 2. Then FBF get port number 3 and port number 4. Foundation study get 5 and 6. Okay, now I will do the same thing for all the switches. And then I want to put this switch on one building. Okay, so the reason is that, let's say today I'm from FICT. The rules here says that I cannot join FBF network because I'm not a lecturer there. The same thing for them. A FBF lecturer cannot join FICT network. Why? For the security reason that we have talked about earlier. Okay, I think it is actually more dangerous to FBF than FBF to us because we are the one that know about VLAN, not them. So you see, if I do so, that means that now every switch they support different network. Okay, now what happened is today, let's say I go to block H, FBF, and then I have a meeting there. So I bring my laptop over, I want to connect to the network because I'm having a meeting there. Okay, so naturally what I want to do is I want to find on the switch that are all these ports. Normally what you do is you will label okay, you have to put a label here. So this port number 1 is FICT, port number 2 is FICT. And then when I go there, I just take a cable, connect my PC to the port that belongs to FICT. Then I can go to the internet. Okay, if I take my PC, because I'm from FICT, I connect my port to FBF, I cannot online. Okay, so there is a certain mechanism that is checking on this. So there are many ways that you can do this. For example, you want to check the MAC address of the PC. If this MAC address belongs to FICT, and when it connects to the LAN port in FICT, belongs to FICT, then you can go online. So this is a kind of security implementation that you can do to secure a network. So for example, of course you don't really see this because this switch is put in a cabinet, and then all this wire will go into the wall. Okay, so what you will see is something like this. From a wall, you have a socket, and then you can put the cable into this socket. Then you connect this to the end device. Okay, so of course I cannot break the wall to show you what is going on, the internal wiring. But what I want to know is that with VLAN, even though I'm from FICT, now I can go to another building and then I can still get online. Do you see what I mean? Okay, now you might be thinking, actually it can be way easier. Why you want to make it so complex? If I don't set VLAN, I go to FBF, I can go online. Yeah, but then you have the security problem. Okay, so to protect all the stuff here from joining the wrong network, we have configured VLAN on the switch. And then the good thing about VLAN is that it doesn't limit me to be working only in FICT. Now you see, if I don't configure VLAN properly, okay, means that this switch is for FICT only. Then I put it in FICT. Some other guests from other faculty come to FICT. When they connect the PC to the port on the wall that they can find, then they cannot go online one. Okay, the same thing will happen to me. If in FBF they configure a switch only for FBF stuff, then today I go to have a meeting there. I connect my PC, I cannot go online one because I am not a FBF stuff. Do you get what I mean here? But with VLAN it is different because we can reserve different port for different network. Doesn't matter where you are from. Okay, so that is the second reason you want to do VLAN. Now that sums up all the theory part of VLAN. So we'll take a 5-minute break. When we come back, we'll go through how we can actually do all the things that we have just discussed. I think right now you might think, VLAN is really kind of like magical, okay? And maybe you're getting interested to know how to do this. So in a short while, I'll see you back in 5 minutes. We'll learn how to do this on a switch using the packet tracer file that I've given you on the link down below. Okay, so I'll see you back in a short while.
记得那场音乐会的烟火，还记得那个凉凉的深秋，还记得人潮把你推向了我，游乐园拥挤的正是时候，一个夜晚坚持不睡的等候，一起泡温泉奢侈的享受，有一次日记里愚蠢的困惑，因为你的微笑幻化成风，你大大的勇敢保护着我，我小小的关怀喋喋不休，感谢我们一起走了那么久，又再一次回到凉凉深秋，给你我的手，像温柔野兽，把自由交给草原的辽阔，我们小手拉大手，一起郊游，今天别想太多，你是我的梦，像北方的风，吹着南方暖洋洋的哀愁，我们小手拉大手，今天加油，向昨天挥挥手，还记得那场音乐会的烟火，还记得那个凉凉的深秋，还记得人潮把你推向了我，游乐园拥挤的正是时候，一个夜晚坚持不睡的等候，一起泡温泉奢侈的享受，有一次日记里愚蠢的困惑，因为你的微笑幻化成风，你大大的勇敢保护着我，我小小的关怀喋喋不休，感谢我们一起走了那么久，又再一次回到凉凉深秋，给你我的手，像温柔野兽，我们一直就这样向前走，我们小手拉大手，一起郊游，今天别想太多，你是我的梦，像北方的风，吹着南方暖洋洋的哀愁，我们小手拉大手，今天加油，向昨天挥挥手。给你我的手，像温柔野兽，我们一直就这样向前走，我们小手拉大手，一起郊游，今天别想太多，我啦啦啦啦，像北方的风，吹着南方暖洋洋的哀愁，我们小手拉大手，今天加油，向昨天挥挥手，我们小手拉大手，今天为我加油，舍不得挥挥手。摘一颗苹果，等你从门前经过，送到你的手中，帮你解渴。
像夏天的可乐，像冬天的可可，你是对的时间，对的角色。
已经约定过，一起过下个周末。你的小小情绪对我来说，
我也不知为何，伤口还没愈合，你就这样闯进我的心窝。是你让我看见干枯沙漠开出花一朵，
是你让我想要每天 划最幸福的风格。
用时间去思念，爱情有点甜，这心愿不会变，爱情有点甜。
已经约定过一起过下个周末，你的小小情绪对我来说，
我也不知为何伤口还没愈合，你就这样闯进我的心窝。是你让我看见干枯沙漠开出花一朵，
是你让我想要每天为你写一首情歌，
用最浪漫的副歌，
你也轻轻的附和，
眼神坚定着我们的选择。是你让我的世界从那刻变成粉红色，
是你让我的生活从此都只要你配合，
爱要精心来雕刻。
我是米开朗基罗，
用心刻画最幸福的风格。是你让我看见干枯沙漠开出花一朵，
是你让我想要每天为你写一首情歌，
用最浪漫的副歌，
你也轻轻的附和，
眼神坚定着我们的选择。是你让我的世界从那刻变成粉红色，
是你让我的生活从此都只要你配合，
爱要精心来雕刻。
我是米开朗基罗，
用心刻画最幸福的风格，
用心刻画
最幸福的风格。
Okay guys, welcome back. Hey, don't worry. She will appear when the timing is right, when you are ready for her. Okay, so coming back to the slides. So I will take 10 minutes to go through some of the basic configs that I think you should know in configuring VLAN before we get into the real configurations. Okay, so over here, yeah, if you look at the slides here, of course it's up to you lah, whether you want to use the slides or you want to use the cheat sheet. Now, for the first time, I will just go through the slide with you, and then start from the next. When we actually go to do the playthrough, then I'll be using the cheat sheet. Okay, now, how do we make all this magic happen to create VLAN? Okay, now there are 3 steps. We are talking about creating VLAN. Now it's different from how do you do trunking and stuff like that. So in the whole stream here until Friday, in fact we will cover 3 things: the basic stuff in configuring or creating or deleting VLAN, and then we will do VLAN spanning, which is when you have many switches together, we want to connect all of them together. And then the third one will be called inter-VLAN routing, meaning that we want to make devices in different VLAN to be able to talk to each other using a router. So today we are only going to do the first one, which is how we can create the simple VLAN. So when it comes to creating VLAN, there are 3 steps. In fact, there are only 2 steps if you don't want to name the VLAN, depending on how lazy you are. Okay. So first one is create VLAN, and then you want to name the VLAN, and then you want to assign port. So you see, when you create VLAN, it means that you are just creating VLAN number 2 or VLAN number 3 that don't have any effect to the network. Okay. So when we create VLANs, means that logically on the system there is this entry of VLAN. Then step 3 is important, because in step 3 we have to go to these ports, all the port on these switches, and then manually put all of these ports or assign them into the VLAN that we have created. So step 1 and step 3 is really important. Now step 2 is to name the VLAN. Some of the time you might want to name the VLAN if you are dealing with a large number of VLAN and then you cannot remember VLAN 2 is for FICT and VLAN 3 is for FBF. So in fact, it is a good idea to name the VLAN so that you can just recall easily. Okay. Now next thing here, this slide shows VLAN 1. Okay, this is important. Every time you buy a new switch, if it is a managed switch, all of these ports by default out of the box, they are all in VLAN 1, which is why we call VLAN 1 as a default VLAN, which means that if you don't configure any VLAN, all of these ports will stay in VLAN 1. Okay, which is also why sometimes when you want to remember earlier when we learned about computer network, we take a switch, we connect all the devices together, we put in the IP. If the IP is correct, then they are able to ping each other. Correct? We have never ever do anything on the switch, but it just works. That is because all the devices that we connect belongs to VLAN 1. They are somehow in the same network, which is why we don't have to do anything on the switch, but by just connecting devices, if they are in the same network, they already can ping. Okay? That explains it lah, because it's in VLAN 1. Now, and then the next one here, this one I will show you in a short while. So over here, this command here, we have this show VLAN. Okay, so later when you configure the switch, just like as you configure a router, we always want to check whether we do this right or wrong. So on the router, you will be doing show IP route, or maybe show IP interface brief, or show run. Now, same thing for a switch. If you configure VLAN, you want to know you've done this correctly or not, you do a show VLAN brief. Now, I want you to take a look at the output here. You see, when you do a show VLAN brief, you will see all the VLAN here. Now, when you get a new switch, by default, this is what you will see. It is the same for all the switches. You have VLAN 1. This is created by default. You don't have to create VLAN 1. And by default, all the ports will be inside VLAN 1. So you see here, all of them are inside VLAN 1. So this one here is actually a 24 port switch, which is why you see you have FA01 all the way up to FA0/24. And they are all in VLAN 1. And then you will see a few special VLAN like 1002, 3, 4, and 5. Now this one, we call them a special VLAN. It is also already there when you buy a new switch. And this VLAN you cannot use. Okay, you cannot create a VLAN using this number because this number is already reserved for this special VLAN. So if you look at the next slide here, next slide here show you how to create a VLAN. Now the command here you don't have to worry because as we play the game together in a short while, then immediately you will remember all these commands. So now next thing here, how do we create VLAN? That's the first step. Okay, in fact it's really simple. You just go to the config mode, make sure you're in the config mode lah, and then you type the command VLAN followed by the VLAN number, which means that if you want to create VLAN number 2, you type VLAN 2. You want to create VLAN number 3, you type VLAN 3. Now if you do so, then you look at the output here, and this time you will see that you have one new extra VLAN. VLAN 2 is now appearing here, and this is VLAN 2. Okay, now next look at the ports here. There is nothing in VLAN 2. So over here, after we create a new VLAN 2, all the ports still belongs to the same VLAN 1. Okay, so this is important. If you want to put any ports from VLAN 1 to VLAN 2, you have to type the next command, which is to assign port membership. Without doing so, you are just merely creating VLAN, but no ports will be in that VLAN. Okay. Now before we go there, there's one more slide here. This slide here show you the VLAN number. Okay, this one is what we have talked about earlier. You see, VLAN 1 is the default VLAN. It comes with all the any switches out of the box. All the ports will be in VLAN 1. And then VLAN 1002 to 1005 is a special VLAN. Normally we don't use them, but what does it mean to you is that you shouldn't create any VLAN using this number. And for the rest of the number from 2 to 1001 is any number you like, you can use to create VLAN. Now it doesn't have to be in increasing order like 2, 3, 4, 5. You can just randomly take any number of your choice to create a new VLAN. Okay, now and yeah, just now remember we said that you can actually choose to name your VLAN if you want to, so that you remember like VLAN 3 is for what, VLAN 4 is for what, VLAN 5 is for what. Okay, now to do so, you simply use the command name, which is really intuitive. Just type name followed by what you want to name the VLAN. Okay, so you see in this case, when I do this, it means that I create a new VLAN 3, and at the same time, instead of calling this as VLAN 3, I want to call this as finance. So if you look at the output here, do a show VLAN brief. Now this time you will see that it is actually called finance. Okay, you see VLAN 3. Now instead of showing VLAN 003, I show you the name, which is way more intuitive if you're going to create a lot of VLAN. Now there's a question coming from the chat. So can you create any VLAN after the number 1005? Okay, now the answer is yes, you can, but those VLAN after 1005 is called the extended VLAN. It is not the standard VLAN. And the problem with extended VLAN is there are certain features that a normal VLAN is not supported if you use the extended number to create VLAN. Okay, so that is called extended VLAN, and normally we wouldn't have to worry about that, because you 1000, like 2 to 1001, you have like 999 number. For you to create VLAN is way more than enough for you to create VLAN, unless you want to create like 2000 VLAN, which again you don't have that many ports on the switch anyway. So I think that most of the time you wouldn't be using the extended number. Okay, now here let's go to the next slide. This is one of the most important command that you should know. Now take a look at this switch. This is a 24 port switch, and by default all of them is in VLAN 1. So now your job is you want to put this port here, port number 10 and 11, into VLAN 2. So to do so, it's really simple. You need to go to, of course, you have to do this one by one port at a time. So you want to start with VLAN, the port 10. So you get into port number 10, and then you use the command switch port access followed by the VLAN number. So you will type the command switch port. Now this keyword here is access. It could be trunk or access, but right now you're going to use access, and then you put in the VLAN number, VLAN 2. If you do so, this port will automatically assign to VLAN 2, and any device that you connect to this port number 10 will join VLAN 2. So if you want to do this for the next port, the port number 11, so you go to FA011, and you will use the same command, switch port access VLAN 2. And that is how you assign these two ports to VLAN number 2. And of course, the rest will still be in VLAN 1. If you don't touch it, it is always in VLAN 1. Okay, now, next thing is, okay, now this is a bit of extra for you. If you cannot do this, that's fine. So in some cases, we have a problem where I want to assign ports to VLAN, but I have so many ports that I have to do. So for example, in this is an easy example, because like I only need to do this for 2 ports. So I'm typing like 4 lines of commands, which is not going to take so much of time. But what if I have something like this? So using back the same example here, instead of put all the other port to VLAN 1, I want to put all these ports in, say 16 until 24. Okay, I want this to be in VLAN 3. Now, in this case, based on what we have learned, you have to do one by one. Go into INT FA016, do switch port access, and then come out. Then go into 17, come out, get into 18, come out, do until 24. No, I'm not going to do that. So in that case, you can use this command range, and this allows you to specify a list of continuous port that you want to assign to a certain VLAN. So for example, in this case, we are trying to get to assign from port number 1 all the way up to port 9. So instead of I do 9 command, I just specify a range of the port, and it is followed by this extra. So you have one extra line of command, which is switch port mode access. Okay, so before you can actually say which VLAN, you have to type one line of command. Then you go back to the normal command that we have earlier, switch port access VLAN 10, depending on which VLAN you want to put it in. Okay, so in fact, let's say if I do this, so I'm going to say something like intfa0/16 all the way to 24. So this is something that I will be typing. Now, of course, this one you have to remember to put the keyword range to specify this is a range. Okay, so later on in the playthrough we'll be doing this as well, so don't worry. Now, one extra thing you should know is that when you are using the range, it has to be continuous. Okay, meaning that if I have an assignment like this, I want to put this one to V4, then here to V5, and then here to V4. Now in this case, of course I still want to use range, but you have to do it twice. For example, if you want to set it for V4, so you have to do this one time from port range 14 to 16, but you cannot say 14 to 24 because there are some other VLAN in between, so it has to be continuous. Okay, then you have to do another time, do another range from port 22 to 24. So somehow it is still better than you type one command for each of the port. Now you can just type 2 commands for 2 different set of range. Okay, so that's another thing that you should be aware of. And now we're going to talk about how we delete a VLAN. So let's say if you type something wrongly when you are doing VLAN, or maybe just say that I want to delete a VLAN, for example, now today we don't have this faculty anymore because I want to combine this faculty with another faculty, something like this. So in those cases, we might want to delete VLAN. Okay, now when we talk about deleting, there are actually two kinds of delete. Now the first kind of delete is you are deleting the VLAN wholly, entirely. It means you delete the whole VLAN. I can take away VLAN 2, I take away VLAN 3. That is the first kind. The second kind of delete is I want to delete the VLAN membership, meaning that I want to take away the VLAN assignment from a port. For example, now port 10 belong to VLAN 2. I don't want. I want port number 10 not to belong to VLAN 2 anymore, which means go back to the default VLAN 1. Then I can do another kind of delete. Okay, so over here, if you want to delete the whole VLAN, it's quite simple. You just type no VLAN followed by which VLAN that you don't want. So for example here, if I type a no VLAN 2, look at the result here. Now this VLAN 2 is no longer there. That means you are deleting the VLAN as a whole, as it is. Okay. Now, of course, another thing you should know is VLAN 1 cannot be deleted because it is the default VLAN. Now another kind of delete is that you want to delete the port membership. So in this case, you want to use the command no switch port access VLAN followed by which VLAN that you want to get out from. Now to do so, you have to be in the port that you want to make the changes. For example, now over here, FA, this one, port FA0/20 belongs to VLAN 2. I want it to go back to VLAN 1, so I have to get into this port first, and then followed by the command no switch port access VLAN 2 because this is the VLAN that I'm currently in right now. And if you do so, you come here and then you check. Now VLAN 0/20 go back to VLAN 1 already. Okay, so this is deleting the port from a certain VLAN. There are 2 different kinds of delete. Now, one thing you should know is that when I delete the whole VLAN, I'm just merely deleting VLAN. So let's say if in a VLAN, I already added some ports, then suddenly I don't want to have that VLAN, I delete the VLAN. Now the trick is you might think you have done your job, you have cleared all the browsing history, you are safe, but actually the port assignment is still alive. It still stays on the switches. Okay, meaning that next time, if you remove VLAN 2, next time you create VLAN 2, all the previously assigned port to VLAN 2 will still be there. Okay, so that is something that you should be taking note of. When you delete VLAN by the number, all the port assignments still stay active, just that you don't see it on the switch. Okay, so now if you are clear about all the commands, we will now start to do the first packet tracer file. I think we'll take a 2-minute break because that's really a simple one. So you can open up the file if you haven't already done so. I'll see you back in 2 minutes and then we'll start to configure for the playthrough.
还没好好的感受雪花绽放的气候，我们一起战斗，会更明白什么是温柔。还没跟你牵着手，走过荒芜的沙洲，可能从此以后学会珍惜天长和地久。有时候我会相信一切有尽头，相聚离开都有时候，没有什么会永垂不朽。可是我有时候宁愿选择留恋不放手，等到风景都看透，也许你会陪我看细水长流。还没为你把红豆熬成缠绵的伤口，然后一起分享，会更明白相似的哀愁。还没好好的感受心之亲吻的温柔，可能在我左右你才追求孤独的自由。有时候我会相信一切有尽头，相聚离开都有时候，没有什么会永垂不朽。可是我有时候宁愿选择留恋不放手，等到风景都看透，也许你会陪我看细水长流。有时候我会相信一切有尽头，相聚离开都有时候，没有什么会永垂不朽。可是我有时候宁愿选择留恋不放手，等到风景都看透，也许你会陪我看细水长流。
Okay guys, welcome back. So right now I'm going to explain the story behind the playthrough first. This one, the file that you are looking at right now, you don't have this file because this one is just for me to show you the story. Your one will be slightly different, so I'll get to yours in a short while. Now over here, welcome to Disneyland lah. And now, if you know you have been growing up, you have a great childhood. I'm sure you have heard about all these fairy tale story. I hope you do lah. Okay, I think I have, because then I am very happy that I have a beautiful childhood. But I'm sorry to tell you today we will be learning VLAN. I will tell you that the fairy tales that you have heard so far, they didn't tell you the full story lah. There is another side of the story. So I'm not going to tell you that today. I will tell you on Friday, and then you will say that I will ruin your childhood. But you should know that. You should know the truth. So over here, coming back to this network here, we have 4 princesses and they are currently staying in their own castle. But the problem is right now, due to MCO lah, okay, no choice. Disney is not doing so well, so cannot give every princess your own castle anymore. So now what happened? I only can keep one castle and everybody have to stay in their own castle already. Okay, so in this case, you don't have to do this. Later on, I will show you what you have to do. So I only have one more castle, and then this is not Cinderella castle anymore, okay, because now this is shared by 4 princesses. So everybody will stay in the same castle now. So let me move them here. Okay. So of course, when you are doing this, if you just connect them to one physical switch and then that's it, you don't do any VLAN configurations, then it will look something like this. Okay, it will be something like this. Okay, now this one means that all these 4 princesses, they stay in the same room in the castle. Okay, one big castle. Now you cannot have this, because when you have 4 princesses that stays together, then they will start to, girls lah, you know, so they will start to pull each other hair and then throw pillow at each other. So we don't want that to happen. So although they are physically now connected to the same switch, we still want to logically segregate them into 4 different networks. So you can think of this like in one big castle, there are 4 rooms, and then now they are staying in different rooms. Okay, so something like that, and which is why you have this kind of visualizations. Now of course, when you do so, this one is no longer a LAN. We call them a VLAN, so you have to add V in front. So this is VLAN, VLAN, VLAN. I think it's supposed to be based on the network that you have. It is something like this. Now for Cinderella, you cannot put her in VLAN 1 because VLAN 1 is a default VLAN. Okay, means anybody without a room will stay in VLAN 1. So we don't want Cinderella to stay in a crowded area, so we want to move her to VLAN 5, which is why later on you get a network like this. And our job now is to configure this switch so that each of our princess will have their own room. Okay, so if you're ready, you can start to configure this. So we will start with the first episode here. And again, this is a playthrough file, so there are total 8 items here. If you get all of these correctly, then you get 8 out of 8. Okay. Now, how do I configure VLAN? First thing, I will recommend that you open the cheat sheet and then put it side by side here, so that you know how to configure. Okay. Now, first thing is, if you look at the packet tracer activity file here, I will just go through the activity file with you lah. So you have only 4 instructions here. First one is you want to add FA01 to VLAN 5. So that is why, again, it's important for you to show the port labels so that you know which port that you are dealing with. And just a head up for you, Lab Test 2 is actually configurations, no MCQ anymore. So I hope that if you think you have been in the honeymoon, right now is the time to wake up. Okay, you have to really configure this. So over here, FA01 to VLAN 5 means that this one here, this port here, I want to put in VLAN 5. Okay, so this is VLAN 5. Okay, change this to VLAN 5 because we want her to move to VLAN 5. And then I want to name this VLAN as Cinderella, just so that I know which room belongs to who. And then I want to put FA02 to VLAN 2, means that this FA02 here, this port here, later on I want him to be in VLAN 2, so that when I connect this PC, it will join VLAN 2. And then we'll do the same for VLAN 3 and VLAN 4. Okay. Now, of course, if you go back to the slide, to create VLAN, step 1 is create. Step 2 is name. Step 3 is assign the membership. So of course, you can do this in any order, but just a trick for you are like, if you want to assign a port to a VLAN that you have not created, actually luckily for us, the switch is smart enough that it will automatically create a VLAN for us if it is not created already. Okay, but we don't want to do that. We want to do everything step by step. So we start with the first one. Okay, I want to do VLAN 5 first. So of course I go into the switch, and just as if you when you are configuring a router, you can do the same thing for a switch. And you want to get into the config mode, then you can do your VLAN. So to create VLAN is very simple. Just type VLAN followed by the number VLAN 5. So for those who are not familiar, you can always refer to this command here. So to create, just type the command VLAN followed by the VLAN ID here. So if I want to create VLAN 2, I'll just put VLAN 2. Okay. Now after this, when you want to name the VLAN, you just use the keyword name followed by the name that you want to give. So over here, you want to immediately name the VLAN after you create, so that you don't have to do this work twice. Okay. So I want to name this as Cinderella. That is for VLAN 5. Okay. Then normally you want to type exit to go, so that you can go up one level and then you can go to another VLAN. Okay. Now I want to create the next VLAN here. So I have done with this. Now I want to create for VLAN number 2. So I will type VLAN 2, and I want to name this as Sleeping Beauty. So the exact syntax for this one, you have to follow the lab menu, the instructions given. Okay, so it's Sleeping Beauty. Then I do exit here. So now I'm done for this one. Next, I want to create VLAN 3. So I just type VLAN 3 followed by the name, which is Snow White. And then I'll finish up with VLAN 4, and I want to name this as Mulan. That's it. So if you have done so, it means that you already created 4 rooms for our princess. And to check whether you have done this correctly, you will use the command show VLAN brief. And when you type this, you will see that now that is really correct. We have created VLAN 2. The name is Sleeping Beauty. VLAN 3 is Snow White. VLAN 4 is Mulan, and VLAN 5 is Cinderella. So that is correct. Okay. Now, if you have done so until now this stage, you are supposed to get 4 out of 8. So I'll give you a few minutes just to see what I have done earlier, and then 1 minute. Then we'll go to adding VLAN membership. Okay, is everyone okay? Let me know if you're okay. Let me go on to the next one. Okay, cool. Now, next, what we want to do is, of course, one of the most important thing is to put this port into the right VLAN. And to do so, you have to get into the port itself. So right now, I will start with this side here. I will do for FA01 on the switch. So do a config T, get into int FA01. Now, for you to add membership, you use the command switch port access VLAN followed by the ID. Okay, so for example, if I want to put this FA01 to VLAN 2, then I'll just do switch port access VLAN 2. So in this case, I want this to go to VLAN 5. So switch port access VLAN 5. That's it. Then you type exit so that you can continue your configurations. And we want to set for VLAN 2. So I go to int FA02, which is this port here. This port is having 02 here. And then I do switch port access VLAN 2. Okay, something like that. So you can just do the same for the next 2 port here. Yeah, something like that. So if you have typed exactly like what I'm showing you on the screen, then what you have done is you have already get each of these port, and then you have put them into the right VLAN. Now of course you always want to check whether this is correct, so you can do another show VLAN brief. And now you see, yeah, this is the VLAN that we have created in step 1 and 2, and then now we have already put them into the correct correct VLAN. So Cinderella FA01, correct. Now FA02, Sleeping Beauty, correct. Now this one, Snow White is FA03, Snow White FA03, correct. It is in VLAN 3. Now last one here, FA04, Mulan, VLAN 4. So FA04, Mulan, VLAN 4, correct. So all is correct. Now if you have done so, means that you are quite a hero lah. Now all princess, although they don't have their own castle anymore, but at least they still have their own room. Okay, so they don't have to pull each other hair. Now if you have done this correctly, you can claim your reward, because you will see you will get 8 out of 8. So let's see whether you get 8 out of 8. Yeah, so if you have done this properly, you're supposed to get 8 out of 8, and that is how you do the basic stuff for VLAN. You can create, you can of course name, and then you add. Now I give you a few more examples here. Okay, now let's say on this switch here, looking at all these port FA05 until 010, I want you to put them into VLAN number 5. Oh no, don't put number 5. Put it on VLAN number 10. Now of course, we have learned that if you are with me, we are the kind of lazy person, so we don't want to do this port by port. So you can try the command, the range command here. So what you do is you put int range FA0/5. Now I want to put 5 until 10, so until 10. And then you go back here, and then you see the label here, switch port mode access. So I want to put in, this is one extra line where you don't put if you don't use the range. Okay, followed by the same command, switch port access, and then VLAN ID. So switch port access VLAN 10. Okay, now you see because I haven't created VLAN 10, the switch is so smart that he will create one for me. And just to see if this is correct, now I do a show VLAN brief. You're supposed to see now all this port has been added to VLAN 10 just by 2 or 3 lines of command. Okay, so this is how I've done it. Now of course, like what I said earlier, if these ports are not continuous, then you cannot put all of them in one line. You have to do it a few times depending on how the port are segregated. So next thing, let's try to delete this VLAN 10, because we don't want this VLAN 10 going to the next episode. This is just a demo, so we don't want this VLAN 10. Now of course, what we said earlier is that there are 2 ways for you to do a deletion. Now first thing is you can either remove all these ports one by one, or you can just remove the whole VLAN 10. To make it easy, I just want you to remove the whole VLAN 10, and it is as simple as typing no VLAN number 10. Okay, now if you do so, hold on a minute. If you do so, then you can check whether VLAN 10 is still there. See, VLAN 10 is gone. Cool. But did you notice something? Where has our port gone? Where is FA05 until FA010? Something is wrong. So like what I said earlier, when you're deleting the VLAN, actually the membership is still there. So those ports still belong to VLAN 2. And actually we have a problem now. If I want to use that port, I cannot use, because now they are like invisible. I cannot fight, I cannot do if you're invisible, I cannot help you, right? Something like this. So anyway, this is just a demo. What I want to show you is all the basic stuff that you can do on VLAN. Now if you're okay with this, next we'll go back to the slide, and then we want to talk about the trunk cable. Okay, so I'll give you 1 minute to save your file and then get back to your slide. Okay guys, now next thing I want to show you is how we are actually connecting cables to build VLAN. So over here I have two switches, the same switch, and the first thing is when we are configuring VLAN, say we have already configured, okay? So some of the ports here belongs to certain VLAN, and what I do is, of course, what we normally do, if I want to connect a device to that VLAN, I have to take a cable. So let's say this yellow color, okay? Now I have a lot of colorful LAN cable here, and if you are thinking why they are colorful, it's not because like, okay, this one yellow color is very fast, then green color is even faster, then red color is the fastest, not like that, okay? They are all the same cable, just the only difference is like depending on what color you like lah. So sometimes you know when I'm young, I say I'm the red ranger, and then my brother say he is the pink ranger, okay? So it's just color, nothing special. Now what I want you to know here is that, let's say I use one color for one VLAN, okay? So for example, I put one cable here. So this one, the next thing is maybe I should put it bigger. Now next I want to connect this cable here to a device, and let's say this one connect to a PC, then that PC will belongs to VLAN 2 if yellow color is VLAN 2, okay? Then I take another cable, I connect to this port here, and then let's say this one is over here I put VLAN 3. So let's say green color is VLAN 3. If I connect this end to another PC, that PC will be inside VLAN 3. Okay, that is easy if you have one switch. But when I have two switches, for example, I have this one here and this one here. Okay, now of course over here on this side, I also have VLAN 2 and VLAN 3. But when I want to connect these two switches together, let's say I connect using a normal LAN cable, okay? So let's say I connect these two switches using like this kind of LAN cable, and then I connect this and this. Okay, so this gray color one is just a normal LAN connections. Now, when we do so, the problem is that the device on this switch in a VLAN and another device on this switch in the same VLAN, say VLAN 2, they will not be able to talk to each other. Okay, again, although you are in the same VLAN, but you are connected to two different switches, those devices cannot talk to each other if I connect these two switches using a normal cable. Okay, now how can we fix this? You need to configure this port to carry the traffic for that VLAN. So for example, if I have VLAN 2 here, I also have VLAN 2 here. For the device on this switch to talk to the device on this switch, I need to take one dedicated cable. So I use yellow again so that you're not confused. I have to connect this cable here to the switch, and then another end to this switch. And what I need to do is I have to configure this one to carry the traffic of VLAN 2 so that the VLAN 2 people here and the VLAN 2 people here can talk through this cable. Okay, now if I have VLAN 3, okay, I need to take, okay, this one cannot use that, this one is connected to a PC or something. Now I want two devices, one each, one here and one here. They are in VLAN 3. If you want them to talk, you have to take one cable, connect these two switches together, any port lah. If those port, those port you cannot put in any VLAN yet, okay? And then you want to set this port to carry the traffic of VLAN 3, so that two devices in the same VLAN on two different physical switches can talk to each other. Now, the problem with this is that if we keep on doing this, we are actually using one port on the switch to build the connections to link the switches. So for example, now over here, this switch here, I only have 8 ports. Okay, if I build 4 VLAN, 4 of the ports will be reserved to link to another switch. That means I'm only left with 4 ports that I can connect to N devices. Do you get what I mean? So when we are doing so, actually, remember when we start this stream, I said that I want to help you I want to teach you how to build a simple, clean, minimalist network. But if you are doing this, in fact, you are making it worse. You have more cables, okay? That's because somehow you need a connection for each VLAN to another switch. Now, we don't want to do so because we are wasting a lot of ports on the switch. And the way to solve this is by using what we call the trunk connections, okay? So what does trunk mean? Okay, I'll play a video for you to show you how I build the trunk cable. So basically, trunk means that we want to take like this cable here, okay? This like all the messy cable. I don't know about you lah, but if I see this kind of cable here, I don't have the mode to work lah, okay? It's so messy. Now, how can we make this clean? So all these cables combine into one big trunk cable. So this one, what I have here, I call this a trunk cable, means that 5 in 1. And with a trunk cable, I can carry the VLAN traffic for many VLAN across a single path. So instead of I have one cable to carry a VLAN 2 traffic and another cable to carry for VLAN 3 traffic, now all the VLAN traffic will be passed through the same cable, a big cable like a highway with many lanes, and you only use one cable to connect to one port on each of the switch. Okay, so that's a trunk. Now I'll play you the video on how I create the trunk cable, something like magic, and then we'll stop here. And next week, after the video, I will stop the stream. And on Friday, I will show you how you configure trunking on the switch. Okay, so after this stream, I want you to go back to the slides. Okay, before I play you the video, I want to explain this a little bit. So now if you look at the slides here, trunk basically means this. Okay, you take many cable, you combine them into one big cable like a big highway, and with that you can carry all the traffic for all VLAN. Okay, so if you want to see this clearly, look at this diagram here. So over here in this diagram, I'm sorry, I just need 5 more minutes. So I have one VLAN 4 here, VLAN 4, VLAN 4, and then I have VLAN 5. So I only have 2 VLAN here. Okay, now for the end network, I only have 2 VLAN, but you see, to connect, because now I have a few switches, not one, and remember this is called the VLAN spanning, and if I want the PC here, let's say this PC here, in VLAN 4, PC 0 to talk to the PC 4 in VLAN 4. Now they are both in the same VLAN, but if you want them to talk across switches, you need to have one cable to carry VLAN 4. Do you see that? Now for this PC 2 to talk to this PC 5 in VLAN 5, I need another cable here to carry the traffic for VLAN 5. That is the normal way, okay? But we don't want that because you are wasting a lot of ports. So we want to, you see, even by looking at this, I feel it is so girly, so many cable, I cannot tahan. Okay, so you don't want this. You want one big cable, trunk cable, and then you touch it, and then you say, this cable actually spark joy. Then that is the right way. Okay, so now I'm going to play the video, and after the video, I will just end the stream straight away. So again, thank you for joining this stream. I'll see you again on Friday. Peace out. But there's a video coming up, so don't go so soon. I'll play you the video, and then I'll see you on Friday.
to me. It's the age of princesses and pirate ships and the seven dwarfs. And Daddy's smart and